So we're joined by Gayathry Venkiteswaran, who's a lecturer at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia campus, to talk to us a bit about what a media council is and what it can do. Hi, Gaia.
Hi, Sonia. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Can you explain to us a bit about what a media council actually is?
So generally the role or function of a media council is to be a place where if people have complaints about ethical or professional conduct of the media, so they can actually bring up their complaints there, and where an independent body or an independent committee can look through based on a set of code of ethics, because the purpose of the council is really to promote ethical and professional conduct for particularly the news media. In this case, we are focusing on the news media, and where it's better that it is done as a self-regulatory mechanism rather than having laws that say you can write this, you can't write this, you can write this in this way, you can't write it in that way. So this is a much more sort of self-driven mechanism to say, okay, what do we in society think are the standards that the media should be following, and how can we hold them accountable? So part of it is also to ensure that the public is well engaged with the media, has what we call as media literacy. So when you look at when you read, when you watch news content, do you see that, for example, the media reports comply with say privacy rights of individuals? Do they give fair access to people of different views? Is there respect for say minors or people who have been who are survivors of different kinds of abuses, for example? So these are the different things that we can hold the media accountable for. So the role of the council is really to promote that and to allow for people to say, okay, we think that these particular reports or this report has violated the code of ethics, the media code of ethics. And we think, look, you should really be telling them to adhere to those codes. On the second big function, I think, of the Media Council is actually to promote press freedom. So it's not just to say, look, you guys have to be ethical and professional, but we also need to make sure that you have the freedom and the rights to perform your functions, your role as watchdogs in an environment that allows you to access information, to work safely, that you also have protections for the media. So it's not to, sort of just have that vision or scrutiny over the media and say, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? We're going to catch you if you, do something wrong. But we're also saying that, look, we give you the space, we give you the rights because we need the media to be independent, to be critical. But at the same time, we want you to act in a way that is ethical and professional. That's yeah.
There's a huge amount of information there. But before I ask you to unpack some of that, what are the major obstacles to a media council in Malaysia at the moment?
So I think I would say there are three big obstacles. The biggest of it all is really the fact that we have an over-legislated environment. So we have a range of laws that can be used in order to sanction the media, but it is often decided by those in power. Because if we look at the role of laws, and the enforcement of laws, it's very top-down. Of course, if you and I have an issue with a particular report, we can lodge a police report. But then we are criminalizing the media and news content, which is something that we don't want, right? I mean, this ought to be, sort of the freedom of the media to report what they want. But if we have issues and we make it a police report, then it becomes, that sort of criminal process. Then it's the enforcement and the authorities that decide or define what it is that the media has done wrong. And we have seen that, through the use of the Official Secrets Act, through the use of the Printing Presses and Publications Act, the Sedition Act, Communications and Multimedia Act, and the list can go on, really, the Penal Code. So it's an over-legislated environment already in Malaysia. A lot of media companies actually often worry that they are going to be slapped with defamation charges from individuals or companies due to reputation risk, but also the issue of licensing, right, for publications and also broadcasters. This is always hanging over their sort of like, it's like a dark cloud over their heads that, okay, are we going to get our license? Because it's the authorities that decide that. So it's defined often by those in power. And usually it is defined as content that may be prejudicial to the state, to the government, to those in power. And that takes priority in terms of how to sanction the media. We have seen definitely where, even where there are laws to protect, say, vulnerable groups, that doesn't happen even when somebody lodges a complaint. So there is definitely that selective use of the law. So the big chunk of the problem is that we have too many laws that govern and regulate the media. The second one is also, I think that a lot of media may see this, or media outlets may see this as another way of controlling them. Because obviously, if you ask any media outlet, they want to be able to be independent and free of any kind of control. And with the years of experience of, I think, this kind of state control, it is, it's not surprising that, when you talk to a media person and say, we need to have a media council, for example, and say, no, we want to be free. We don't need another instrument. And I think that's understandable. But I think we need to explain that it's not about controlling, but it's really to encourage the kind of good practices and ethical standards. The third challenge, I believe, is that the way public engages with the media, or the lack of engagement, in fact, with the media. We have we don't have enough sort of checking on the media as citizens, as people who consume those information as well. It's very limited. So we read the content with already a lot of biases or lack of knowledge or understanding of the role of the media. So that's I think there's a need also to encourage the public to understand what they can hold the media accountable for. So the problem of, I think, setting up this council is also the lack of public demand, maybe even because maybe they don't really see what is the point of having a council. So I think they are not equal because it's disproportionately problematic with the legislated environment.
So what do we need to have, particularly in terms of the legislative environment, before we can seriously talk about self-regulation?
Yeah, so I mean, an environment that promotes self-regulation is one that breeds or encourages, that promotes a level of trust, a level of understanding of, I won't call it a social contract, but an expectation, yeah, that with the ability to report critically on any issue, also comes an obligation to the public, right? That we are doing our best. It doesn't matter whether you're a commercially driven outlet, you're a community outlet, or well, I won't say state because that's not an ideal form of media that we actually want, but I think it doesn't matter where your motivations are, whether it's commercial or non-commercial. But I think that the media outlet has an obligation to the public because it is dealing with public information. It is dealing with the shaping of minds. It's dealing with political issues and political rights as well. So there is an obligation to the public. So I think that we really need to sort of like promote this trust level, and it has to be done in an environment where somebody's not waiting at the back to use any of the laws if they don't feel that we are complying or adhering to any of those standards. So we can't have the laws as we have today and then talk about a media council, because there could be points where then, even if the council has very good standards or code of practices and code of ethics, as long as the laws that we have are still in existence, it can still be used against the media. So it really, in fact, does not promote the kind of things that we are talking about, like self-regulation. If there is no attempt, if there's no review of the existing laws. So to put it very simply, we have to get rid of the Printing Presses and Publications Act. We must actually really talk about even repealing the Sedition Act. We must review the penal code as well that deals with expression and content. We must review the Communications and Multimedia Act, because all these laws and a few others can be used against the media where content is seen to be, criminal in that sense, right? So they have to go, or they have to be seriously reviewed if we want an environment where media can regulate themselves with the public, actually, not just themselves, but also with the public involved in the process.
Okay, we don't have too much time because I don't want these to be too long, but can you just talk a little bit about, you mentioned in that first bit about sanctions that the Media Council might have. What do you mean by that? What would they be able to do?
So it depends on how the media community and also civil society sort of come up with this mechanism. But the range of sanctions could be anything from ensuring that where the media has definitely flouted any of those code of ethics, that they must publish apologies, because that is actually a way of saying, okay, we take responsibility for not adhering to our own codes of ethics. So you can publish apologies. There is also maybe to publish clarifications where, say, there were no verification of information and things like that in the report. It is also possible, depending again on the mechanism, to impose fines. But that is something that, of course, it has to be agreed upon. But I think that could be a way also of making sure that there's a lot more seriousness, in that level of commitment. But I think that we should really not look at any kind of criminal sanctions. That's not what we're talking about. So it has to be a lot more promoting rather than a kind of preventive, or the kind of criminal sanctions that we have for other issues.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll stop it there. There's a huge amount more to cover, but perhaps we'll try and get other people to come on and talk about those in future. Thank you very much.
Okay.